when someone's 5 years old, they're put into this kind of outdated cultural factory, so to speak. We get at the end of year 12 or whatever, the product of 13 years of production work.
I'm going to read out this line and then I'll get your thoughts on it. So, perhaps the greatest mistake we are making in education is setting up institutions that suggest learning ends, graduation, final exams, course completion.
Yeah, you come back. There's a legendary book by James Pass, I think his name was, called Finite and Infinite Games. And, a finite game is a game that's meant to end. A game of soccer, for example, the goal is to win, before it ends. Whereas an infinite game is something that's continuous. And the point of it is just playing. Like there's no real end in mind. And normally the goal is to continue the game. I guess evolution is an example of that. It's a desire to keep moving it all forward, or writing for me is an infinite game. The point is not to just write a book and stop writing. The joy actually comes from writing. I actually want to continue the game. I want to extend it as much as possible. Now, the problem I have with our education system, as an overview, and that's why I think it's the greatest mistake, is that reality is actually infinite. Reality is infinite. Like if you zoom right out, the overall system that we're a part of, to go really, really high level, is we are a consequence of, whether you like it or not, whether it hurts your brain to think about it or not, millions or billions of years of evolutionary progress, which is also part of a universe that is infinite. Right? We don't know the borders of the universe. Right? It's ever expanding. Right. And I think at some point it will start to contract maybe, but for now it's infinite. Like we don't know where the ends of the room are. And so that's the reality we're placed in. And anything you really, so to relate that to something that will make more sense to the average kind of listener who doesn't sit there thinking about the cosmos all day like I do, just think about the thing you really want to do with your life. Sorry, I'll take that. It's a very bad thing to focus on. A thing that you like to do in your life.
In terms of an interest?
Yeah, an interest or an activity. I'll come back to me and writing.
Yep.
Pursued in an infinite way. I don't plan to retire from writing one day. The same way people might plan to retire from work that they just have to do. They have to work. So the goal is to just work and retire as early as possible. That's a finite game. But when work is pursued as an infinite game, it's ever extending. So why I relate that to education is that everything in education sends this signal that you got to get to a point and then you're done. And all you're just doing is qualifying for something else. So you get a final mark. The class ends.
So are you saying potentially that even in the process of learning, when you're in school, for example, you're never really engaged in the actual learning, like the process of learning and what the subject you're.
Correct.
So, for example, you're sort of begrudgingly studying to get a mark, or because it's going to get you,
It's a means. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like, I remember, I'll just give you an example. Like I started doing well in school, not phenomenal, but doing quite well when I started enjoying, like, for example, business studies. I was pretty good at business studies, but I was like enjoying learning the content. Like it just interested me.
Yep.
And that was my best subject. And then, for example, with English, like I didn't mind writing to a certain degree when I was in school, and I found I did quite well in that. But I saw a lot of, like, looking back, I didn't quite understand it, and I still don't fully. But looking back, you see a lot of people just studying, but they're miserable for the most part.
Yep.
And that's maybe what you're alluding to, is that you're ingraining that when you go into a work environment. It's like I'm working to get money.
Exactly.
It's like I'm not working because I'm not working because I enjoy the work I'm doing.
Yeah. That's exactly what I mean. It shapes a culture where people think about work that way. Albert Einstein died in the early 1950s. And alongside his bed, they found a notepad with equations written on it. At the very end, he was still trying to crack the secrets of the universe, right up until the very end. He had no money to gain from it. He knew he was dying. He had nothing left to prove to anyone. No extrinsic motivations. He was just so infatuated with the pursuit of what he did. That's what made him who he was. It was pursued as an infinite game. It was not a means to an end. It was not just he wanted to do that so he could get a Nobel Prize. That's how we're conditioned through schooling. We're conditioned to find. So for me, you can look at it manifested in my dream to be a filmmaker. It was like, wow, I want to be the Academy Award winner.
Wow. So that was a quite a large motivation for you, was it?
It was the image, but
Yeah.
I did love it. But so it wasn't about, I just want to spend all my time doing film.
Yeah.
See, that's how I think about writing now. Is like, I just want to spend all my time writing, not I want to get I don't know, some prize or anything like that. Now, the thing is, at high school, like I wasn't really interested in physics. But when I read about Einstein, when I was able to come to it on my own terms and find a way to engage in it, which was through a person, through a figure that I could relate to, it made me fascinated to know more about physics.
Yeah.
Which is how a lot of people find these things after high school, like history or English or writing, that they were not interested in at school because they were forced to do them. And why were you forced to do it? It's a means to an end. You got to do it so you get this mark, so you qualify for something. And then you've got this culture of people procrastinate, they can't study, and they feel guilty about it because you're just not interested in it. Why are you being blamed for not being interested in something that you're not interested in? And now all these people think they have problems focusing and they think they have ADHD. And then they pathologize or, criticize themselves for just having a good, natural, logical tendency not to just do something just because you're forced to do it. And it's not clear to you why you're doing it. Yeah. You're here to get a mark, which is some sort of ticket to the world that comes after, but you don't even know what you want to use that mark for. And so that the fact that we put a finite thing, they did this study on young children drawing, where these children actually drew less when they gave them like stickers or prizes for drawing. They actually started drawing less. When they were just left to draw, it was just their natural tendency. They just drew. Yeah. When they were made to think that they were doing it for a prize, they do the least that is required to get the prize. Wow. So that's what I mean by that's the biggest mistake we're making. We create this culture where it signifies to people, just do the least you need to get the result. That's why we don't get people who have initiative and show leadership, because they've been conditioned for 13 years to do the least they need, mainly on a system level. It's not always the case. Teachers always encourage, students on a one-to-one basis, but as a system, which you can't ignore because you're human, we are conditioned to do the least required to get P's, get degrees, I only need this much to get into my course. These are some of the things that are in our Western culture. And that's why I think that is the biggest mistake. It's ripple effects over the entire way we approach work for multiple decades and whole lives.